had a guitar given to me. I mean, now you'd laugh at it. I think I hand painted it with red hammerite. I soon bought something, I suppose, for about 20 quid. And yeah, well, I was really crap for an awful long time.
We decided that probably the best way of keeping out of trouble was to form a band. So that's what we did.
I started playing in 1970 and I started playing live in 1970.
With the sound of metal.
Let's start with Gary Murchie. Gary Murchie at the time, well, he still is everything I wanted to be, really. Well, he's not now, because he's old like me, but well, a lot older than me.
I started singing really when I was at school and stuff like that, but when it got into the sort of band stage, that'd have been about 1979, 1980.
Gary, great singer, really good singer, Gary Murchie.
He had the look, he had the hair, he had the wailing voice, very good voice, and stage presence, so no, loved him, absolutely fantastic.
Vengeance always featured Gordon Liu on guitar, who plays with me in No Paparazzi and Missing All Stars. Vengeance were Guernsey's heavy metal band, probably the equivalent of 1,000 Points of Hate at the moment.
Gordy, I've played in bands with Gordy now, and he was an enigma, a very quiet guy. Half Chinese, half English, once again, very good look for rock. And the best thing about him, he had the a guitar. It was strung so low that he almost had to have caster wheels on it to sort of like walk across the stage.
I'm actually very proud, and I'm honoured that some people sort of put it in that sort of vein. Obviously that's not just down to myself, that's down to the other guys that were playing in the band at the time, such as Gordon Liu, Brian LaHure, Charlie Herzog, Steve Collinet, Andy Fuller and so on, and Glenn Holmes.
Glenn Holmes, no, I wouldn't say that. He wore waffle jumpers and small and dumpy. Looks like even back then he could be somebody's dad, or a little gnome that sits on possibly like in your garden, you know, under a tree. But my God, could he play? But to see them was like to see my heroes in the UK and on a local stage. Yeah, like I said, I could talk all day about these guys.
Well, the risk. The Risk, Mark Legale and The Risk. I mean, Mark's got his own label and company and whatever. I mean, he sells records all over the world.
The Risk really were a product of the 80s, and even though we were a mod band and we were a power pop band, we were an 80s band, I suppose, influenced by 60s music.
Yeah, The Risk are the only Guernsey band that I know of that have toured America, and they were asked to go to tour America. They didn't do it off their own bat, you know, they were invited. So it doesn't get much bigger than that, really. We
lived in San Diego, we played in Los Angeles, and we played in San Francisco, and we played in Sacramento, Bakersfield, all over the place. It was great. I mean, best time of my life. I mean, you know, when I was young, it was brilliant.
You gotta stop, look and listen, grab the money again.
Before we know it, we're in all the UK mod fanzines and in the international mod fanzines, and we're starting to get known. And you know, the single we did, Forget the Girl, the first single we did, Steve Free, it just sold out within 3 or 4 months, you know, it was like 1,000 copies, it just went.
Yeah, Risk, Mark Legale and Colin Leach and that, they were a fantastic band. Again, we were working the circuits locally together. I went to school with Mark and that, so I know the way he thinks, and he's certainly a guy to be contended with.
Mark Legale is one of the most prolific songwriters of all time, not just in Guernsey. I think he's got hundreds and hundreds of songs.
I don't know, about 200 songs, I suppose. Don't ask me to remember them all.
You gotta shoot from the hip. You gotta shoot from the hip. You gotta shoot from the hip.
Let's rock.
Every day is a good day to rock and roll. The party never stops. Today is a good day to rock.
You see, back there in '87, the dark old days of '87, It was totally different. The amount of bands playing, I suppose there was, well, nobody of our age. I mean, I first played, our first gig was when I was 20. I mean, it really wasn't very professional. In fact, it was anything but we were the only young band. There was nobody as young as us playing, and so therefore anybody who wanted a party had us to play. Anybody who wanted to have a good time had us to play. So it was more style and circumstance over substance, but it was a great laugh.
We had a good old rivalry between us and Nemesis.
We got Bryn Harrison, who's now a successful entrepreneur. We've got Zach Mousetrap, guitar player, who also, he's got his own business, doing very nicely for himself. And then we've got Darren James, who now works as a commercial lawyer, and obviously me, who I'm a fireman and producer.
The first night in Weymouth and the second night in Newcastle, the third night in Stoke, the fourth night in Newcastle is not necessarily the best way to go.
Where didn't we go? I suppose notable places, Newcastle. Newcastle, the price of the pint, oh dearly. I suppose there's more drinking than playing there. Back in the day, yeah, we were playing to these pubs, and they hadn't been done up since the war, so the whole street was decimated. And then in the middle, there's this just lone pub, bastion of drink, still standing there. We played there, and I remember this old bloke, whatever his name is, I don't know, Geordie. Anyway, yeah, I think it was Geordie. And he turned up with his whippet. And I think, yeah, we played to about 3 people that night.
Insurrection were a punk band, but I think there was a lot of hair involved.
Insurrections was myself on guitar, Pete Riddle on bass, Mark LePage on vocals, and Rene Tostevin on drums to start with. And then we got Ian Allsop, now in Gay Army, on second vocalist. So that was the finished lineup basically. Yeah, we went 2 tours. First tour we toured with Doom. We played all over Birmingham. We played Bradford. I can't remember. We played Wigan. Yeah, we rubbed shoulders with all the bands at the time. A good times, Insurrection. Unfortunately, myself and Mark LePage came home, and Ian, Rene, and Alex, who then came in for Pete, stayed in the UK, and the band broke up. We had a whole album's worth of material just lost that we were going to record, but just because we broke up, lost it all really, and it's such a shame because it would have been a corker of an album.
Probably the best venue that we really played was the Firming Tavern.
Places like the Cellar Club, which unfortunately now is an underground car park for one of the major banks in town.
We were the last band to actually play at Cellar Club, and then they closed it down.
The Savoy Suite.
I mean, the main one was Savoy. That used to be the big gig venue. Everybody used to play there.
It was along the front, in front of the North Beach. It was where the new complex that's been built over the last few years. I think there's a wine place there now.
Well, the venue probably that was the closest to our heart was the Deep End, but that was the Cobo Bay, and we used to play down the Cobo Bay in their back room there. Now that room was great.
There were venues everywhere. Every hotel was a venue. I used to put on a 2-day festival at the Vale Castle called Valestock, which was completely different. The first year I think we just did it for 1 day, and then the next year we did it for 2 days, and thereafter we always did it for 2 days. It was always a 2-day sort of music festival, and it was always local bands, and I think at one time I had 25 bands on the 2 days.
Yeah, we did Market Rock, and we did Valestock, and I helped Mark out once on Valestock. They were good gigs. I mean, it's good anything for this island to get bands playing is great. I mean, I'd like to see Market Rock come back. Hopefully it will do this year, I don't know.
I can't remember when I started Market Rock, but I finished in 1995, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. But it was sort of, at that time, I couldn't see what I was going to do the next year to make it better. In fact, there wasn't going to be any way of making it better. it sort of fizzled after that. I think it rumbled on for a couple of years and then sort of fizzled out.
Don't know, we've never been really spoilt for venues in Guernsey, I mean, ever. I mean, the tavern was great in its day. I mean, it was the best one. It still could be, you know. You're always struggling for venues. It's still the same today.
What is really evident is the difference between how well you play at your age compared to how I could play at your age. There's just no comparison. And if you could take a band from 1970 of 12-year-olds and put them with a band of 2008 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds, nowadays the bands have wiped the floor with what we were doing.
There was 3 bands. Now there's, you can go. The guys are forming bands left, right, and centre, which is brilliant. That's what you want, you know. Just wanting to be creative and get out there and doing it. It doesn't even compare. We were very isolated. We had to put our own shows on, our own gigs on, and it was just the scene that came. Now everyone goes to see all the bands. That never happened when we were young.
To achieve something back then was a real achievement. There was no help. There were no bands. There was us and the Sacred Hearts, virtually. There was no scene. Today, fantastic. But I think a lot of bands go out and play too early, unrehearsed, not good material. Actually, very much like we were back then, but we could get away with it because there's no other competition.
I mean, you've got a lot of bands over here, and the standard's really good, actually, I must admit. But it's wrong to say that they weren't as good, years ago as they are now. That's not true.
The assistant on the BBC Guernsey website, but part of that I run the BBC Guernsey unsigned section.
I think Tom Girard is a legend. He does a fantastic job. No, he's at every gig. You see him there. He gets into the music. He's enthusiastic, and he's a good journalist. He can really write really good reviews, and it comes from the heart with him.
Yeah, I set that up in June 2006. That must have been. To sort of basically profile all of the local bands, up and coming ones, any of them. We've expanded it sort of, I think, beyond some of the expectations to include things like cover bands and DJs and things like that, but basically it's just to focus on new talent in the island.
And he's there, he's just getting into the music, and you see him predominantly tries to get to as many gigs as he can. And he's doing a lot for, before there was no avenues, there was the weekender, and that was it.
Just try and go along to as many gigs as I can. I mean, the good thing it's done for me is that it's got me going to gigs again, which I'd stopped doing for quite a while. And, I hope it helps people out, letting people know when gigs are on and what sort of music is played over here, because there's an awful lot that I think people don't think is actually happening. When you say to someone there's 80 bands or there's 80 acts doing music in the island regularly, they're amazed. So we try and keep up with all of that.
But now Tom's getting it from a different angle. He's hard-working and he does a very good job. He really does.
There's no venues for people to play, so you've got all these bands over here, which are all quite, they're all pretty good, and they've got nowhere to play. Something has to be done, really.
I don't think it's recognised by anybody. I mean, we've got galleries in Guernsey with pictures in it. We've got people supporting football, thousands of pounds ploughed into stadiums. But where's the acknowledgement of the musician, the artist,
It's what we do. I mean, it's not about money or anything else. It's in you. If you want to play or be in a band, it's part of your character.
You see a great explosion of youth and ideas and of passion, and so now there's a scene.
It needs more.
Yeah.
I can't sum up with one word. It needs more than what it's got. It needs more style variety. There's so many bands that have the same style. You just need a bit more variety in what you're listening to.
There's a lot of way to go, but hopefully, in a small way, I'm helping to raise the profile and make a mark for music in Guernsey.
Music is alive and well in Guernsey, that is a fact.
Coaching